Recording for this meeting has begun.
Hello, okay, I guess we're about ready to start, right?
Yes.
Go ahead, Tricia, please do the opener.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. This is our fourth webinar in this series about the support coordinator's role in employment and person-centered planning. And just welcoming back John Butterworth and Janine Lockie from NASDs and the work they've been doing with DSPD and the Supported Employment Leadership Network. This is sponsored by the Division of Services for People with Disabilities and Utah State University, the Center for Persons with Disabilities. So thank you. I know we changed these dates around a couple times, and we're excited to wrap up this series. We'll have all the recordings available on the CEIutah.com website, as well as, I believe, DSP will be posting them on their website as well. So I'll turn it over to you, John and Janine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trish. Hi, everybody, again for our fourth webinar, as Trish noted. My name is Janine Zalaki, and I work for NASDs, and I am providing this webinar with my co-partner here in this endeavor, John Butterworth from the Institute for Community Inclusion out of UMass Boston. Today's webinar, we're going to focus on employment and the ISP. And this, as I said, will be our fourth webinar. The objectives today that John and I are really focusing on is providing a very high-level overview about the important elements of person-centered planning. We hope that you gain an understanding of the importance of writing effective goals or outcomes. And lastly, we really want to help to provide you with information that's going to increase your knowledge of writing employment goals and outcomes based on all of that rich information that you gather during, your plan meetings or just checking in with people and having conversations about employment. I want to start off with the CMS regulations because case management plays a very central role in assuring service quality and outcomes for people enrolled in Medicaid financed home and community-based services. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, have really supported, and not only supported, but have invested in person-centered planning for many, many years. CMS issued a regulatory expectation for person-centered planning as part of the package of the Home and Community-Based Services Regulation and related rules. Person-centered planning is a requirement for all individuals receiving Medicaid-funded HCBS. And I use this slide because it's set up. I know that Utah is invested in the Supporting Families Community of Practice. And this slide is really set up as, if you're familiar with the trajectory slide. The cloud represents what everybody wants out of life: friends, family, self-determination, community living, building their own social capital, and their economic sufficiency. All of the elements that are around that cloud really represent the tenets and language in the CMS regulations that are going to help get the people that you support to the aspirations that are in that cloud. I want to really just focus on two of them for right now, just to highlight, because I really think it has a lot to bear on this webinar. And that first one is when you're doing an ISP or a plan, the person has to have opportunities to seek employment and work in competitive integrated settings, engage in community life, and control their own personal resources. And then that last one on the bottom, which is the big, big bar for all of this and the CMS regulations and people's experiences, that those who are receiving support through all of us and you all in Medicaid, they have to receive services in the community to the same degree of access as people not receiving HCBS. So that's a really big bar and a necessary bar of normalcy and having an everyday life. There are certain key elements of a person-centered planning process, and this, I know many of you know Michael Small from Support Development Associates, and I really think he coins it well here. A couple opening remarks about person-centered planning. You know, the process really identifies information, obviously, about the person and summarizes all of the assessment results that everybody brings to the table. The information the case manager derives from that person-centered planning process really becomes the basis for a person's roadmap to successful life outcomes based on their strengths and needs. And oftentimes, those life outcomes include employment. This person-centered process, I really feel, is a foundation, but it also, as you all know, remains a very fluid document. Just as things change in our lives, things change in the people that you're supporting's lives. As they grow, as they change, as they move through their lives, many of the areas within that plan should change accordingly. So that's why circumstances and a person's circumstances, meeting them where they are, and the relationships that they have matter a great deal. Sequencing matters. We have to talk about people's preferences, but as we all know, we can't do everything at once. So, you know, sequencing what's important to them and their values have to come first. Really focusing on a person's gifts and talents instead of starting these planning meetings with, you know, a person's deficits. Focusing on the degree of effort invested in the planning, and that should be equal to the degree of support that's requested by that person. We don't want to take over the planning process. To the degree that the person can lead this, they should be doing it by all means to the best of their ability and with how much, you know, they want to, the degree of effort that they want to utilize. It's their meeting. The plan addresses both and does not fall into either or. So it's both and it's not an either or in people's life. So you can pick lifestyle over your health and well-being, for instance. There may be risks that need to be identified in the health and welfare section, but that doesn't, you know, take the whole precedence of the important 2 and 4. And then friends and family and those who love the person and know us best are really important, and they're they're adequately important as professional staff. They have to have a voice. Here are just really quickly those 3 pieces of person-centered planning that are verbatim from the CMS regs. When you're doing the person-centered plans, you have to make sure that the setting where the person lives, the person wants to receive services, is chosen by that person and is integrated in and supports full access to that greater community. And you all know that states have developed transition plans and put forth any of those settings that they feel don't meet the tenets of the CMS regulations, specifically around settings that isolate. I already went over opportunities to seek employment and work in competitive integrated settings. And lastly, that opportunity to engage in community life to the same degree. So I put them on this slide because I think they bear repeating, because they really are the focus of planning. So let's talk a little bit about your roles in supporting the person through that person-centered planning process. I started in this field, I'm not going to say how many years ago, but I started as a support coordinator, and I definitely can identify some mistakes I've made along the way based on, you know, for instance, who my mentor might have been, or, asking someone, you know, do all of your services meet your needs? Yes. Oh, terrific. Let's just continue that for the next year. That really isn't the true essence of person-centered planning. And through my years of experience, I've really learned that. As the case manager, your core responsibility is ensuring that what that person identifies is important to
I'm going to fill in for John, this is Sheila, and I lost audio.
Okay. I think Janine lost audio, but looks like she's
Hold
back.
on. John, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, so sorry, folks. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, your role, I think I was starting at as a case manager, and your core responsibility is assuring that what that person identifies is important too, taking into account also what is important for them, and maybe some of those health and safety issues, is addressed based on the individual's preferences first and falls in line with their desired outcomes. Person-centered planning is not fitting that person to the system and supports. It's finding a fit between the person's choices and paid, unpaid, and generic support and responses. Lastly, I just want to say that the person-centered planning is unique and it's very individual focused, and it's a process that values, as I said, what's really important to a person. And if you do it in a person-centered way, you're definitely going to get at highlighting their strengths and skills. This is data. If you are all familiar with the National Court Indicators, NCI data, NCI is a voluntary effort by public developmental disabilities agencies like DSPD. And what they do is there are surveys that are given to people receiving support, and it is a way to collect data and measure and track a state's own performance against the performance of the national average, which is all of the other states that are also participating in National Court Indicators. We always like to highlight community employment as a goal in the service plan. It's one of the questions for the NCI survey. And as you can see, this data reflects not only the state of Utah, so the yes answers for the state of Utah are 33%, and the yes average for the national average are 28%. So that falls, in line with the national average, but what it also tells us is that we can do so much better, okay? 67% say that they don't have employment as a goal in their service plan, and most of them want it. So this is a data point that we can all identify with. It's a data point that we can ask ourselves when we're planning, are we addressing that? Because it's taking those steps here that get us to move that employment needle. Goals and the outcomes and the actions to get a person to them are not done, to the person. They are always done with the person. And that data just shows you. I talk a lot about person-centered planning, and I know we all know it. You all know it. You're probably all doing it. But what I think is prevalent to all of us when we start to really look at person-centered plans at a high level is that for person-centered planning to be really done right and individualized, it can be messy. There's so many different parts. There's important who, there's important for, there's family, there's, the person's interest, there's what the team thinks is valid here to report. So you got to really untangle that messy ball there and really get down into the weeds. It's really based on active listening to what the person is saying, either through words or actions, because we get a lot. What if the person can't talk? Words or actions, and learning from experiences to determine what really works best. When we really know these things, we're able to determine the best ways to offer support for people. So it has something of value here when you get down in the weeds, and you'll be astounded at the contributions that are made and the greater degree of control over decision making for the person. So a little bit about the support coordinator's role in planning. From listening to me talk about person-centered planning, you know that this is something that's done incrementally. To meet someone's outcome what they want to see in their life, it begins with a single step forward. And that's why I said that data on person-centered planning and who has a goal in their ISP. It's a single step that you can make for the people that you support on your caseload. The job seeker, that person, is going to be the center, whether they, facilitate, challenge, engage, organize, and we got to remind team members of that this is about the job seeker. They're the focus of this meeting, not everybody else. Just like going into the weeds, we talk about being comfortable with going to the skinny part of the branch, okay? This is the skinny part of the branch that we're taking our little steps towards. We're a little bit nervous. Is it going to break? I'm not sure it can hold my weight. It's kind of, that we all learn our lesson kind of thing and make mistakes. No idea is a bad idea. Most often, I have to tell you that concerns about health and safety, as you can probably all be shaking your head, are the ones that come up first. If health and safety, though, trump what the person considers important to him or her, like employment, for instance, then that discussion immediately lacks a balance between important to and for, okay? So collaborate on these things. Think outside the box. Engage in conversations a lot about employment. Teams also sometimes worry that they will not be allowed to try something new or take a step toward an outcome that has some risk. CMS in their rules say risk mitigation strategies just need to be identified in the plan. So the key to really developing this plan with a strong emphasis on employment and is still having the employment conversation. We know that Utah DSPD is working on their own pathways document, and these documents really help to build a foundational structure for those conversations that align with DSPD's employment goals, okay? Working age people with all disabilities should have the opportunity to work. Paid work is an essential part of having control, and employment leads to personal and professional growth. This Pathways doc really includes helpful prompts, and I'm going to show you. This is the pathways that are in draft for Utah's employment pathways that can be used as a guide for a real in-depth person-centered employment discussion, okay? So those 4 pathways, you can almost always meet someone on one of them. I want to we love putting some of these, pictures in here and references, because if you look at this path, the job-seeking process for anybody, and many of us in our lifetime, is a road or route with a beginning, a middle, and usually end somewhere. It may not be the path you're going to stay on, because then you might want to jump to a new job, and that new path begins, okay? And it's a totally different path. Just because I said I might want to do this and I like that, I might hate it now and want to go, So no path is the same. Even if you want to give something a try 2 times in a row to really be sure, okay? So John and I are going to talk a little bit later on about writing outcomes. And you probably often think to yourself a lot, how can I help write an outcome that's directly related to the employment pathway a person is on, or if they're stuck at it? And, outcomes make a difference in people's lives. They determine what needs to change. They determine what needs to stay the same. And they're the result of learning who a person is, what matters to them, and what supports they need to lead happy lives. John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So we're going to follow through the pathways a little bit, starting with the first one, which is somebody who is unemployed but it expresses an interest in working. And I'm going to try and make this big enough. So the first question, and we're going to have a few of these polls as we go through this section, and also look at some videos and examples of ways that people have had their job search supported. But so the first question is, what kinds of things are you including in a plan as goals or activities that support the job search? We've got a few people mentioning volunteering, and that's a popular way. In my view, I always think of volunteering as, our caution is that there's two reasons you volunteer. You may do it as part of an employment pathway. You may do it just because it's important to you and it's something that you like to do. But either way, it helps us understand who a person is and what they wanted. A fair number of people said a VR-funded trial work experience, and that is, VR has the capacity to provide a paid work experience to people that lets them try out a job while receiving some income for doing that. It's a pretty powerful tool, and it's a good reason to get people involved with VR for something that we can't easily do in the developmental disability system. A couple of paid internships, which is very cool. Informational interviews are a critical place that kind of bundles with job shadowing and job site visits, or people getting out, seeing what their options are. Expanding the number of work experience, of community experience a person has, is also a way to explore what people's interests are. Talking to peers. I got one other, but no, discovery activities with staff. So as a specific service, discovery is something to be thinking about at this point as well. I'm going to pull that off. Thank you. If you've got other ideas, things that have been particularly helpful as activities or goals to include in the service plan as we go through this part, please throw them down in the chat. I mean, all of this is about finding out what activities people are good at and enjoy doing and shaping towards a clear set of goals. Janine framed that as both and. What matters to people in their job experience? That may be a specific type of work. It may also be something more general, like wanting to be in a really vibrant, active environment, or wanting to be in a place that's pretty quiet, where people do their work and kind of keep to themselves. Kind of who is the person? What do they want out of their workplace? And we should begin to be thinking about things like networking with family and friends, addressing specific barriers, moving into benefits planning, and those kinds of things at this point. If they're not sure what they really want to do, thanks, Ruthina. A lot of those things on that previous poll that I had up are really part of that. Discovery is a way to capture that. We can learn a lot about what people want from other activities in their lives, and I have used a variety of person-centered planning processes over the years as a way to help define what people like and don't like about their lives, the experiences they want to be in. Volunteering, community experiences, internships are all ways to do much more targeted assessment. Job site visits are ways to do much more targeted kinds of assessments of what a person's specific work interests might be. I'm going to just play a little bit of a video clip. You can follow through and watch the whole video for all of these. Most of them will have links in the download. This is Ron Brown, and Ron worked at Cablevision, and I'll talk a little bit when we're done his clip about how we got there.
Ron Brown developed a dream during a person-centered planning process called whole life planning. His employment specialist helped him bring this dream to reality by reconnecting him with a friend who was in a position to help out.
Ron, when I met him, expressed at a whole life planning meeting, which is just a person-centered planning, that he had an interest in working at a cable company. He had a friend who worked here at the cable company. I knew Ron a few years ago before he started in the cable industry. I was doing a wrestling show. He was one of our most favorite fans. And he came to work for Continental Cable. He's worked for us for a little over a year, I believe it is now. I started on the payroll. 6 months I get a review. Everybody gets a review. I got a raise, and I'm still on the payroll.
So part of what's cool about Ron's story is that it followed that path. He actually volunteered for that wrestling show, so he had an opportunity to get a feel for what happened at Cablevision. He had an opportunity to build some relationships, and one of those relationships became a lever for him in terms of shifting to a full-time permanent job. That part doesn't come through quite as strongly in the video, but it's also very much a creative job. The job Ron does used to be done by installers. They would come in at the end of the day with equipment that they had to catalog, clean, test before they were done for the day. With the help of Steve, this job was created for Ron that allowed him to take that load off of the installers, give them more time making money for the company out in the real world, while giving him a job in an environment and a type of work that he'd already demonstrated that he was really enthusiastic about through his earlier volunteer experiences. Just switching back a sec. So the second pathway is people who are not sure that they want to work. So what kinds of things have you guys done? No poll here. What kinds of things have you done if someone says they don't want to work? Do people have thoughts about activities that they've tried, particular strategies they've tried that help people explore a range of options that they're not too sure of? And I strike, some people are typing, and as people type, I'll just say, I think some of what Janine said earlier about this being a process is a really important part of this. You know, I think of folks that I've worked with, one person in particular, who when we started to talk about employment, particularly in his case, his family was very much against the idea. It was a 2-year process of trying out experiences and exploring interests, demonstrating capability for both him and for his family, before we finally got to a point where there was a different level of comfort about working in the community. And he did move to a permanent job in the community, working for a local bird feeder manufacturer just outside of Boston, Waltham, Massachusetts. A couple of people are making comments, digging deeper to find out why they don't want to work, and that sort of problem solving is some of what we talked about back in webinar 2 when we talked about the employment conversation. If you can understand that, then you can provide information, you can reflect that you understand it and that you're going to address it. Reminding people about some of the opportunities, meeting new friends, having extra money. You know, a critical part is connecting work to what people want in their lives, and that's not just a work task or a specific job, but a broader set of goals in terms of interaction and fun and challenges and earning money, of course. You know, are all part of what we all take from work. And you guys covered this, sharing stories about working, connecting to peers with jobs, having peers who have gone out and started work come back and spend some time talking to people about their experiences. Community exploration was also part of that earlier piece, volunteering, continuing education, skills building classes, looking for activities they're not doing that they'd like to try, and working across environments to encourage building skills and self-confidence. How about that skill development piece? And this relates to people who are currently working and want to change, in addition to people who may be just looking for a job or thinking about work. Are there particular ways that you focused on skill development as a particular area? That might be mentorship relationships, project search if it's active in Utah, college classes, other kinds of technical training. art classes. I'll have an example of that in a second. Anything else? Jim, thanks for your comment. The opportunity to meet new friends, have extra money for the things that you enjoy. Quite a few people saying mentorship, and that relationship building piece is such a key part of the employment process, something we don't often spend enough time on. It's great to see so many responses there. Is there project search? I'm not sure if there's an active project search initiative in the state of Utah. That is essentially an extended unpaid internship and training experience for people, and can be a very powerful way to get into a different, somewhat less traditional work environment. Looks like no project search at this point. Little bit of project search. Project search is in most cases, but not always, tied to an educational experience, and provides people typically with a 9 to 12 month learning experience working often in a hospital setting, though project search experiences have happened in banking and a variety of other business kinds of environments. Considering, again, this is thinking about people on this path of wanting a change in job. Revisiting things like discovery may be a critical thing. Some of the things on that list we were just looking at, if someone has a particular interest, consider community college training in childcare, if they're interested in childcare, computer classes, other kinds of things that may support career advancement. There may be specific certifications that link to some of their career interests. Or maybe that's advancing in the job that they're currently in and having a chance to add some skills and create a career path there. Important to mention that this phase, someone who's working but is looking for a change, also could trigger a new referral to vocational rehabilitation and bringing some of those resources in to support this pathway. I wanted to take just a second to talk about thinking differently, and it relates both to people who are interested in work and people who want to change in their work situation. We don't always think about, but there's some wonderful examples out there of self-employment or kind of alternatives to self-employment, like resource ownership, business within a business. I'll talk about examples of some of those things in a sec. That may mean wrapping different kinds of supports around people than we usually do. Circles of support that can help people brainstorm and put together a business plan, small business administration supports, business matters, small business grant programs. I think of a few people that I know when I think about those kinds of alternatives. This is Dusty, and Dusty's biggest interest in her career planning process was performance, and the performance experience that it was imagined for her was puppetry, and she has developed a successful puppetry business. Oops, I just have the one slide. I thought I had two. She developed a successful puppetry business that combines event-based activities where she's at farmers markets or birthday parties, those kinds of things, but also regular weekly gigs at a couple of early childhood programs where she both performs but also interacts with the children with her puppets. Corey, who has a dog biscuit business. Jessica, who's the person that's closest to you in this picture, is an artist who had kind of an interesting experience of connecting with an art training studio, a studio that provides training but also support and mentorship to instructors, and helped her develop herself as an artist in a couple of different ways. She creates really lovely silk scarves and other kinds of painted fabrics, but also has done some really wonderful artwork, primarily working in kind of watercolor and acrylics over the years. Freedom Flight here is one of my favorite things that she's created. That's a somewhat less traditional path, but there are certainly people out there who have made kind of business pathways for themselves that focus more on art, either as kind of a sidebar, hobby activity, or in Jessica's case, as her primary focus. Jessica, I should also, thinking about training, her largest support has been from the studio that she works with, but prior to that, she took coursework at the Massachusetts College of Art and used that as a launching path for this area of interest. And I'm going to play a short clip. This is sort of the extreme example of small business development. M, with the support of her family, built a coffee shop as a business in a small community, Independence, Iowa. It's a pretty interesting story of someone who created, with support, a successful business that employs both people with and without disabilities, with M as the owner. So I'm going to take a second to play just a little clip. There are links to her website in the handout, as well as additional videos and other kinds of materials about her business.
This is my mailman, right here. Cause he always give me mail all week. Yeah. So.
Because Emily is so social, we knew she needed to be in the community, and the only thing we could come up with was a coffee shop. Independence that had 2 coffee shops. They both had failed. But what the heck, no.
Well, this is sort of an extreme example of self-employment. M's Coffee Shop has been running for, I think, 7 or 8 years now. It is a community gathering place. They have a back room that, if you watch the whole clip, that gets used by groups, the Women's Red Hat Society, small group meetings, that kind of thing. They have music and other kinds of events, and it's a gathering place. It's been successful in a very small community. And it was put together with support from a wide range of places. Family, you heard from her mom. Family and her mom and dad run a small business. They run a hardware store in Independence. They know what it means to run a small business. They came into this with their eyes wide open. But there was also support from Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation, and particularly support for technical assistance around accounting and legal issues and logo design, some financial assistance for startup equipment. M does get funded home and community-based waiver services for her personal supports in the workplace. They had a grant from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, kind of an odd source, but for business startup and business diversification for wood products that they sell in the business, and a lot of support from the Iowa Work Incentive Planning and Assistance Project. Ruthina, you said you've got someone who's interested in being a certified peer support specialist. There are a wide range of job opportunities, and in the general labor market, self-employment is a significant part of the workforce. About family engagement, and I'm gonna just pull this up. We talked a lot in the last webinar about the importance of networking and family roles in this process. And I'm curious how families are being engaged in the employment process in your work. We've got a networking to job leads, direct participation in discovery or career planning. They are the people who, our parents are the people who know us, our brothers and sisters are probably the people who know us the best of anybody in the world. Conversations with other families, peer-to-peer outreach and networking can answer a lot of questions for a family, as well as help a family build a vision for what the future might be, sharing videos and stories. It's important and it's not uncommon, and this is both from my experience and also from research based at ICI. We often hear from employment specialists that they'll take care of it, that their job is to kind of do this stuff, and there's not as heavy a focus on involving family as we might hope. But families are, nobody's picked provide transportation yet. Families may be a source for that besides information. Families are a tangible resource and should be part of the job search team, but also long-term employment support. I'm going to pull this out of the way for a sec. Regular during the job search, I think it's useful to have regular, at least monthly job search meetings. One of the downloads that we included, if you didn't get them earlier, we'll come back to them at the end of the webinar with a chance to download them. It's called the 30-Day Placement Plan, and it's a very simple concept that emphasizes bringing key players in a person's job search, and I would include family, and in many cases that I've been involved with, that's also siblings, not just parents, might be neighbors or close friends, bringing those people together to be part of a regular check-in where you say, what did we accomplish last month? What are the key things that have to happen next month? And then most importantly, and who's going to do them with expectation and encouragement for family and other network members to take on some of those tasks, whether it's as simple as starting a conversation with a friend who has a business or reaching out in some sort of a way. How about after job entry, job support? Once a person's started, what kinds of things are you focusing on? And in particular in this poll, I'm emphasizing things like job support groups, non-work social opportunities that help a person maintain relationships after work. One of the things that's pretty common for people who end up leaving a job on their own because they're not happy with it is that they're in a job but have lost contact with really important long-term relationships from their time back in more of a program setting. And are we being intentional? Part of the question here is, are we being intentional about helping people? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm showing you that, but I'm not letting you reply to it. Are we paying attention to giving people a chance to maintain those relationships, and are we being intentional about that? An organization I worked with for a while in Georgia was really effective at building two things, building a network of social experiences for people who had started jobs that allowed them to come together and maintain some of those relationships, but they were also very intentional about individual opportunities to have lunch with a friend or meet up on Saturday. You know, these are things that are common for us when we change jobs, but maybe much more difficult for someone who's not independently mobile in the community to try to maintain. A good array of things in people's responses here. So a little bit of focus on job support groups, pretty high on maintaining and supporting non-work social opportunities. Those may be wraparound kinds of things, but my particular focus in my comments there was on maintaining friendships, assessing satisfaction and making sure we're looping back to that on a regular basis. And that's a job pathway point. Is this job still working for the person? Are they interested in different work? Are they interested in a career pathway in the business that they're currently working for? And are we thinking about things like career advancement with training opportunities or certification opportunities? Are all pieces of maintaining a person's job and maintaining their career path over time. You may also be thinking about defined fading plans, purchase of technology to support independence. That's particularly relevant in these times when we're using more remote supports and hopefully learning some things that we're going to continue to do as we go down forward in terms of giving people more independence at work through remote kinds of supports. I'm going to switch us to another short video. This is Carrie, and it's a little bit of a story about the power of remote supports.
Carrie works in the kitchen of a small private school. This is her first individual job in the community. She enjoys reciprocal, caring relationships with several of her coworkers. The natural support she receives at work has enabled success on the job and friendships that extend beyond the workday. Carrie found her job through answering an ad with the help of her employment consultant at Charles River Arc in Massachusetts. Once the job began, her employment consultant was on site to train Carrie. Her supervisor and coworkers felt that they knew best what she would need and how to teach it, so they provided the training themselves, sending the employment consultant on his way after the first day. This set the tone for accountability and their involvement in the success of Carrie's employment. Hi Carrie, can you tell us what you like about working in this kitchen?
Well, I like it. Sometimes I tell stories and some people make me happy.
I'm going to just skip us forward a little bit if I can.
And every event, so she's got a lot of friends too. She knows everybody, so she's a little bit piece of the pie in the whole school.
How is Carrie involved in the school overall?
She is involved in everything that we do here. We're having our final dinner next Thursday night. She'll come to that. The annual fund, she gives to the annual fund, and she's involved in everything that every other employee.
So I included that last piece. There were 2 points. The first point in this is the power of natural supports in the workplace and our willingness to listen to the workplace, understand how they would prefer to support somebody, and be willing to get out of the way. And in Carrie's place, her primary training from early on was provided from her coworkers who were comfortable with being in that role and asked the employment specialist to leave. So being attentive to that and planful about that. The second part is being planful about the other parts of a workplace. What do people do when they're not working or after work? What are the cultural things that are key to a workplace? So I included that short clip where they talked about some of the ways that Carrie was involved in the larger life of the school. There's a little more of that if you watch the full clip. But are we paying attention to supporting people so they can join their coworkers after work on Thursday if they go out for a beer or whatever? Are we paying attention to making sure people have the ability to engage in social stuff, to be part of the softball league, to do the other things that are part of being the fabric of a workplace. That's important in terms of personal outcomes. It's important in terms of workplace relationships. It's important in terms of the supports more broadly that you get from the workplace. So I encourage us to think about goals and supports that relate specifically to those pieces of work, not just getting the task done. Janine, back to you.
Before I finish up with the webinar, I just want to take a moment. I see that Director Pina has joined us, and I was hoping she'd want to say a few words about the direction of employment that she has been, leading with her team for DSPD. Angie? Oh, she's typing. Hold on, folks, a minute. While we figure out Director Pina's, connection, if she's got a connection issue, I'm just going to keep going and then I'll watch. So I think what's important to note from what John talked about and all of the pathways, and then the comments that you all gave on new and innovative things to start with or what works, it's really starting where the person is. Use what they have in their lives to make those connections, and just do what you can to make that, that one step forward that I talked about. Doesn't have to be a giant leap. Anything into the right direction, will be really beneficial for someone. We're going to do one more little clip, and that really gets to that quote on starting where you are, using what you have, and doing what you can. And this is a clip about that features Tracy and Lisa, I think.
So when we started looking for jobs for Lisa, of course we had a job coach. But what I told the entire team was the more people looking for the job, the better. The more eyes you have looking for a job, the better chances we are of getting her a job. The other thing I said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So Lisa's family had a huge network of church, family, community members. So they did use some of their community networks to get her one of those two jobs. So when I talk to people about it's not what you know, it's who you know, that also applies to us as case managers too. For example, I have a client who had applied at a dog grooming place. Well, guess what? That's the place where I go to get my dog groomed. I asked the client if she was okay if I brought it up to the dog groomer, and she said, sure, because she had applied there and was denied getting a job. The next time I went in, I brought in my dog, and fortunately, the dog groomer really, really, really likes my dog a lot, so she does not want to lose my dog as a customer. Me, not so much. The dog she does not want to lose. So I just kind of looked around the shop and I said, wow, I bet you really need help with stocking around here. And she said, yeah, I walk with a cane, and it's just getting harder and harder for me to manage the stocking and the cleaning. And I said, I know someone who would be happy to help with that. And lo and behold, my client got a job there. I stopped and saw her last week because we ran out of dog biscuits, and she is doing awesome. The owner loves her, and my client loves the job.
So I think we really wanted to end with this video because when John talked about that, exploration, and when we talked about, using community networks, I think Tracy and Lisa's story tell that so well. It's not only what you know, but it's who you know, and that includes us when we're supporting a person. It may not be that the family is connecting us with someone. It may be that we're out and about during our daily life, and we stumble upon a need and could connect that for possible even employment to someone we're supporting. So as you can see, Tracy made those connections and made them rather well. I'm going to take a minute now because I think Director Pina has a phone line, and let me unmute her. 1 second. Unless you can help me out there, John, by unmuting. There you go. Hello, Director Pina.
Hi, Janine. I wanted to start just by saying thank you to USU and the State Employment Leadership Network for creating these webinars for support coordinators, because we have, as you know, we've focused a lot of energy on working with our providers, getting them training opportunities, consultants, TA, and we've known we needed to focus on support coordinators as well and make sure they have the direction and support that they need. And these webinars are one way that we're trying to do that. And I appreciate how thoughtful you guys have been in looking at specifically what are support coordinators in Utah looking for, what information do they need, and have been responsive to that. And I really appreciate that last video, because one of the things that has been on my mind too is how critical the role of support coordination is in helping a person achieve what they want in their life, helping them discover what they're interested in and what they want in their life. And it really impacts a person's life one way or another, right? And the goal is always to impact it for the better and have someone grow from this. Another thing that I've been thinking about a lot as we've been looking at the need in our society to balance and have social equity for all, we know this is also a place in our, right, people with IDD also need this representation, and we need to be conscientious of making sure that what we're offering, what we're supporting, is looking at the person as an equal member of society with equal opportunities. And we know that for us, that's going to mean making sure that we're providing opportunities for them to gain experiences, that we're talking through things with them, that we're helping them have a vision of what else is out there. When Janine talked about the pathway tool that we've been working on, we've been with that tool for having the discussions around employment. We've gotten a lot of feedback from families, from service users, and from support coordinators, because we really want it to be effective and meaningful and helpful for everyone. And if people in the end choose not to be employed, it's because they now are more informed and they've had experiences and opportunities. And I think points that people have made is jobs are a good place where people are making friends, meeting people, connecting, and we want people to have these opportunities. We want them to have full lives. So that is really part of why we value employment. Employment gives people money to do other things. Employment itself helps you connect with people and gives you opportunities, gives you experience to gain other jobs if you're interested. It's a critical part of our lives in our society, and we want to make sure that people we serve have equal opportunities with society in general. So thank you very much for your interest in these and for participating and for all of the work that you're doing to understand people better, to strengthen our person-centered processes so that you can support someone in exploring and taking on these conversations. It really does make a difference for people, and I appreciate your work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Angie. Very well said, and I just want to comment on a couple things. I also failed to mention that you are also, BSPD, working on a new individual support plan. And I just want to comment on, what you said about the importance of support coordination. I mean, you all are the, I always feel like we walk in two worlds. We are the, and have been support coordinators, the arm of the person to make sure their interests are put first, and also the arm of the state. And by the arm of the state, I mean to make sure that services are of the utmost quality, people are getting the support that they need to effectively, pursue their outcomes, and that, person-centered plans are done in that very intentional way. And then also a second comment to what you said, Director Pina, is, being informed. We cannot make decisions if we're not informed and if they're not based on experiences that we had. So you either can have information and experiences, or one or the other, to help us, guide our path to those outcomes. So thank you for those comments. I really, on the video with Tracy and Lisa, did any of Tracy's questions jump out to you? Maybe some of the questions that she was asking when she, as I said, she was going about her business and connecting that to the needs of Lisa. Was there, anything that jumped out? I'll wait a second. For myself, what really jumped out is when she was walking into the businesses, she was, very intuitive of what was going on, so that someone definitely in that moment was having some issues, and she used that opportunity to seize it and say, hey, it looks like you need help with this, and I got the right person. Ruthina was saying Tracy was able to provide support in helping her client achieve her goal. Definitely, Ruthina, I think she went above and beyond, right? Because oftentimes we think that, the providers are the only ones out there that are going to do this, but we all have a role, and we can all identify and connect those, a person's interest with some of these job opportunities in the community. All right, we are going to just talk very briefly about choosing a provider. And before I do that, Tricia was saying that she really appreciated how there was, Tracy wasn't afraid to use her connections. Tracy, in a way, did her own community mapping by using things that she experiences in her own community, okay? She knew that Lisa could and would contribute to the business, and, there was no discussion of charity, right? It's leveraging your connections to build a, customized job for someone. So definitely right. So choosing a provider. So after somebody has an interest in employment, and, how do they choose the best provider? Well, all of the willing and qualified providers of whatever service, paid support that the person will be using to help them on their employment pathway, you have to let them know who are the providers. You really want someone who understands how to help people with disabilities find and keep work. You want someone who's invested and sticks with the person from start to finish on that journey, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many failed attempts there are, no matter how many successes and moving on to different and better jobs, someone who's in for the long haul. And someone is in for the long haul because they really, really want to see someone succeed. They might have information on job placements that is public for you to discuss with the person, and they can make an informed choice that way. And most importantly, I think, which helps all of us, think about something that you needed advice on, or if you had a medical condition and that one of your friends has the same condition and went through it already. Connecting with someone, being supported to talk about, their experience is so critical, and it really, really helps to give you genuine information. This is just 2 of your employment supports that we wanted to mention here when, whether someone's, just starting out on their pathway. There is no prerequisite for one or the other. Pre-vocational services provides learning and work experiences, including volunteer work, where the participant, sorry about my dog, can develop general strengths and skills and contribute to employability in the community. Someone may need support in employment, job development, intensive on-the-job training, but these are just 2 of your employment supports, but there are many others to start a person on that pathway. We want to end the webinar today. We talked a lot about person-centered planning and outcomes. And with that being said, I know personally from my work as a support coordinator that writing strong outcomes is not easy sometimes. 2 elements of outcome development really that support the planning process are, 1, the language we use, and 2, how we sequence our words and what's important to the person. Writing strong outcomes combines what's important to and for, and there is always an action verb. How are you going to know that someone is doing something without an action verb being part of that outcome, okay? So if you write an outcome or a statement about what a person wants in their life that only contains information, as we talked about, that's important for a person, all those areas in that planning document where we got to collect all our data on assessments and if the person has any physical disabilities or if they, when really, if it doesn't include what's important to that person and there's not a balance, it's not an outcome. We are writing that outcome ourselves for a person. We are not writing that outcome with the person. So it's really an exercise because outcomes, we have to remember, are not services. They are not. We link people to services that can help them achieve their outcomes, but services should never be used as, someone's outcome. When we take action on outcomes, it's the planning part of what we do as case managers. So I talked about the case manager being the arm of the person, and that's writing those very strong outcomes and the person-centered planning process. And the other piece is being that arm of the state. And what that means is you have to monitor outcomes, okay? A support coordinator's job is locating, coordinating, and monitoring. Is what they said, the provider or whomever that was agreed to be the provider and carry out what's identified in the person-centered plan, is that delivery of that service effective? If issues have come up, are they being addressed? Do we, because of what happened during the implementation of this outcome, we need to examine if we have to make changes in the ISP? That could happen. Assure the person is receiving, the appropriate quality, type, and duration. For instance, John talked about supported employment and phase-out strategy. Maybe you had frequency and duration at some point when a person first started, but looking at the progress that's being made, do you really have to continue with that frequency and duration? No. We can, possibly, pull back on it a little bit. So you're really focusing on, is the person satisfied? And is there progress toward that outcome? And the team together should be measuring the progress on both the outcomes and the actions that people are taking and the ultimate achievement of them. The only other thing I want to say about, SC monitoring is, a provider also has the responsibility to be monitoring progress on a regular basis to determine if all those steps that they're doing need to be changed or the person, if the person's not achieving that outcome. So as I said, it's a, just like quality is everyone's business, helping a person reach their employment goals is also everyone's business. So to end this today, you know, all of that information that we gave you, if you were to, boil it and have it, solidify and drain down, it really is about focusing your energy to help people that want a job get a job. Look at that NCI data. Look at your caseload. Give a person a shot of self-esteem. A job is a shot of self-esteem. It's the lifeline to how all of us feel our self-worth is, and it's also how all of us made many, many, many of the social connections that we have in the community. So thank you so much for your time today. I know that John has a few comments on some of the resources down below, but we really appreciate your time today and would be happy to answer any questions, and also for you to take our poll. John?
My only comments are to please feel free to download, and if you're starting to fill out the polls, give me just a sec to clear the answers so we can start fresh. So I may have an impact on stuff you've already said, but anyways, we welcome feedback. Please download the resources. I talked about the 30-day placement plan. There's a document on networking and mentoring, the slides from this session, and a document on choosing a quality program are all available. So thank you. We look forward to questions and feedback and a continued conversation. And let me just mention, I'll leave this open for a little bit so that people have a chance to